There we go. And I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully everyone is seeing my slides here. So in your email, you receive directions on how to set up your captions. We will also drop the link to the directions in the chat. En tu correo electrónico recibiste instrucciones sobre cómo configurar los subtítulos. También te enviaremos enlace a la sección por chat. So for those of you who haven't done so, we will give you a minute to set up your caption. Le daremos un minuto para que configure los subtítulos.
Una aclaración.
Sí.
Respecto de los subtítulos, Google Meet los va actualizando a medida que vamos hablando, entonces puede ser que la misma frase la vaya modificando por el contexto de lo que se va hablando, como para que aquellos que no utilizaron esta herramienta puedan familiarizarse con eso.
Thank you, Elisa. And for our English-only speakers, it translates in real time. So it will update when it learns the context of what we are doing. On the directions, para subtítulos en español, sigas dirección a la izquierda, the ones that with the Argentina flag. And if you are if you are a native English speaker and you want any of the Spanish translations to come to you in English, you're going to do the ones on the right side with the USA flag. It likely will not give you captions in the other language, only when it is translated. Okay, hopefully that's enough time. So, again, I'm Rachel Orgel. I speak English y un poco español. So hopefully your captions are all set because I'm going to continue the next portion in English. First, we really want to thank UNT, Universidad Nacional de Tucumán, Argentina represent, and especially the economics faculty, Facultad de Ciencias Económicas, for they are the ones who sponsored this event. Everyone will receive a certificate following the event. And I'd like to just kind of quickly tell you how the three of the hosts that you see on the screen all came together. We're going to go back to October of 2023. I was sent to Tucumán, Argentina through the Fulbright program. And I met the economics faculty and worked with many of you who are here today. It's so good to see your faces. Yeah, thanks for the claps. So we worked to improve the mathematics experience of your students. And along with Raquel, you see her name as Luciana Raquel, Elisa and Raquel led that work that we did on the Argentina side. So we all became fast friends and continued to talk professionally and personally. Elisa then came to Maryland in October of 2024. And as part of that visit, we went to the University of Maryland and we saw Sean teach and we met and talked to him. We kind of loosely talked about creating an event that would bring math educators together, and we all kept in touch, of course. So then in September of 2025, Elisa and I presented at a conference in Japan. Yes, you can see Japan in my background. And that was about the continued work that we did across the borders. So we came back very rejuvenated and we reached back out to Sean to get this event planned. So thank you to everyone for showing up and making this a reality for us. Here is our agenda for today. After I finish this welcome, Elisa will give the first presentation for about 15 minutes. Then Sean will be up next with his presentation. And then after that, everyone will join into some small group breakout rooms where you can introduce yourselves, discuss any thoughts or questions you have from Elisa and Sean's presentations. You can also discuss the 3 reflection questions that we sent via email. And then we'll come back together after 15 minutes to answer a few of those questions and close out the event. So we will put these in the chat before we send you to breakouts, but you also have the slides. And as a reminder, here are the 3 questions we asked you to consider. They can be a great starting point for your small group discussions. So one last bit of logistics before I turn it over to Elisa. You have access to a Google document. It is linked on the slides, and you can click right on there to open it up. You can add some questions, some thoughts and reflections during the main presentations from Elisa and Sean, and also some things that come up during your breakout groups. When we come back together, I will pull a few of these and share them with the entire group. Okay, let's stop presenting. That was a lot of information. Hopefully I stayed in my 5 minutes. And are there any burning questions before I turn it over to Elisa? Wonderful. Okay, Elisa, it's all yours.
Okay, let me share my screen. So let me know if you're all seeing my presentation. Okay, so it's good to go. Bien. Mi presentación va a ser en español. Como ya nos presentamos, mi nombre es Elisa y la idea de mi presentación va a ser contarles un poco sobre el uso de redes sociales en la educación universitaria y el engagement educativo que practicamos desde nuestro rol docente. Para esta presentación elegí el título de El aula expandida y vamos a descubrir a lo largo de la presentación el porqué de ese título precisamente a lo largo de las diapositivas. Sin embargo, antes de empezar, me gustaría darles un poco de contexto como para que entendamos el escenario en el que se desarrollan las investigaciones que dieron origen a esta presentación. Lo primero es contarles que en Argentina la universidad es pública, gratuita e irrestricta, lo cual tiene un gran beneficio que es la posibilidad de acceso a la educación universitaria para toda la población, pero tiene algunos contras como por ejemplo la masividad y la cantidad de estudiantes que recibimos. En la materia que yo enseño, que es Matemática 2, tenemos aproximadamente 800 o 900 alumnos al año y somos 8 docentes. Es más, en realidad ahora somos 6 porque tenemos 2 personas de licencia, pero hay otras materias que pueden llegar a tener hasta 2.000 alumnos, por ejemplo. Esto genera también otra desventaja, que es lo que vemos aquí abajo en verde respecto del riesgo, que hay una alta probabilidad de abandono de nuestros estudiantes por una sensación de desconexión institucional debido a esta masividad con la que trabajamos. A su vez, en Argentina, las universidades no tienen dormitorios para los estudiantes, ni tampoco casas, lo que provoca que la mayoría de nuestros estudiantes se trasladan desde sus hogares hacia la universidad cada día que tienen clase. Y los que viven hasta un poco más lejos pueden llegar a tener en ese traslado de ir y venir hasta 3 o 4 horas en transporte público. Y sumado al contexto económico que muchas veces provoca que haya interrupciones por huelgas en transporte del ómnibus, esto atenta contra las clases presenciales. Este es el contexto en el que el grupo de docentes que yo integro nos dedicamos a la investigación en la incorporación de las tecnologías en la educación universitaria. Esto venimos haciéndolo hace 15 años. Sin embargo, después de unos años de estar haciéndolo, nos dimos cuenta que incorporar tecnología en educación en este contexto no era suficiente, sino que necesitábamos herramientas complementarias de engagement para mantener la motivación de nuestros estudiantes. Y esto se sumaba a las características de las generaciones de estudiantes que venimos recibiendo en los últimos años, la famosa generación Z que ya conocemos, y a datos importantes y críticos, como el que arrojó la encuesta que realizó Motorola en 2018 a 2.500 jóvenes en Argentina, que manifestaba que el 50% de los jóvenes pasaba 12 horas al día con su celular en la mano. Esto nos llevó a replantearnos y a pensar que los canales comunicacionales que teníamos con nuestros estudiantes tradicionales debían adaptarse para poder cumplir este rol docente en el que venimos ejerciendo. Ya no podíamos continuar con estos canales de siempre, sino que teníamos que adaptarnos a este nuevo contexto. Empezamos entonces, allá por 2019, con un pequeño paso inicial que fue incorporar lo que son las imágenes virales, los famosos memes. Y los incorporamos dentro de nuestras clases cotidianas. Acá podemos ver en esta presentación algunos de los que hemos utilizado, como por ejemplo en el primer caso para lo que es integral definida, para integral impropia, para recta tangente, para series, y aprovechamos las características fundamentales de estas imágenes virales adaptadas y mediadas por nuestro conocimiento. El rigor del conocimiento previo que necesita una persona para entender la imagen, la capacidad de síntesis de esta imagen visual para una idea y el humor para lograr esta empatía y la motivación tan importante en el contexto que les describí originalmente. Algo que realizamos todos los años nosotros es aplicar a nuestros alumnos una encuesta al finalizar el cursado para conocer su opinión respecto de estas herramientas que vamos incorporando, para saber realmente qué percepción tienen ellos de nuestra labor docente. En este caso particular, el 86% de los alumnos que se encuestaron estaban a favor de que este tipo de herramientas se tenían que incorporar en la labor docente. Con estos resultados decidimos ir un poco más allá, avanzar más. Y nuestro próximo desafío fue crear entonces una cuenta oficial en la red social Instagram de la cátedra, que esté diseñada y implementada por los docentes. ¿Para qué? Para tratar de llegar motivacionalmente a los 800 o 900 alumnos en conjunto, más allá de la frontera del aula física y del campus virtual que ya teníamos a disposición desde hace varios años. Aquí podemos ver un poco lo que fue esa migración en lo que es la implementación a lo largo de los años de este lienzo académico que le hemos llamado, que es esta red social Instagram. Empezamos con distintas etapas, pruebas y errores, que nos fueron llevando desde una implementación inicial hasta un afianzamiento y una unificación con estrategias de gamificación en línea. Y llegamos a lo que ya hace un par de años tenemos consolidado como un esquema formal en nuestra red social que está marcado por 6 grandes hitos. El primero es tratar de tener un hilo conductor. A lo largo de todo el cuatrimestre buscamos una temática que esté popular en ese momento para hacer todas las publicaciones de esa de ese semestre, como pudieron ser, por ejemplo, el boom de las series en Netflix. Hicimos todo un semestre de Matematflix para ir publicando. Luego, cuando salió la promoción de la película Intensamente 2, o cuando fue el Campeonato Mundial de Fútbol. Estos fueron las temáticas de hilo conductor a lo largo de todo el semestre. El segundo ítem que nos caracterizó y que ya lo tenemos afianzado son publicaciones semanales de ejercicios resueltos de exámenes de años anteriores. Es un video corto de un ejercicio, pero ¿qué particularidad tiene? Que son ejercicios que los alumnos eligen cuál es el que quieren ver. Esto a la carta, una menú de opciones por semana donde los alumnos votan cuál es el que quieren ver resuelto. Y el más votado es el que subimos. Entonces generamos una conexión con nuestros estudiantes. El tercer ítem es también una publicación semanal que tratamos de mantener con esa regularidad, con algún mensaje motivacional para llevar a nuestros alumnos a los escenarios académicos del aula virtual, del canal de YouTube de la cátedra, tenemos un canal oficial. El cuarto ítem son las transmisiones en vivo, que ya voy a hablar en un poquito. El quinto es la presencia de sorteos en fechas especiales, por ejemplo, en el Día del Estudiante, cuando el semestre que nosotros dictamos la materia toca el Día del Estudiante dentro de ese semestre, entonces hacemos un sorteo para premiar a nuestros estudiantes, o también para dar un premio a los que obtuvieron mejores promedios. Y por último, el sexto ítem es cualquier otra publicación sobre novedades que sean necesarias para que nuestros alumnos estén al día con la información de la cátedra. Les decía que iba a hablar un poco sobre las transmisiones en vivo, el impacto del Instagram Live, porque para nosotros fue esto un gran descubrimiento y un gran desafío. Hasta este momento previo que empezamos a utilizar esto, nuestros alumnos contaban ya con horarios de consultas disponibles para que fueran a clase, para que fueran a las oficinas de la cátedra a hacer consultas, para que accedieran a través de Google Meet también a horarios de consulta. Y sin embargo, en general, esos momentos llegábamos a tener 8 o 10 alumnos. Tal vez en un momento de una clase de repaso podíamos llegar a 30 alumnos. Sin embargo, cuando empezamos a implementar las consultas en vivo, previas a cada examen, o sea, hacemos 3 a lo largo del semestre porque tenemos 3 exámenes, tenemos 300 o 350 personas conectadas a lo largo de una hora u hora y media, participando activamente. ¿Cómo participan nuestros estudiantes? A través de un sticker de pregunta que ponemos en una historia antes de iniciar la consulta al vivo y luego durante la transmisión mediante comentarios y reacciones. A nuestros estudiantes les encanta reaccionar y la consulta en vivo, la transmisión en vivo permite esa participación, la reacción del estudiante mediante emojis en ese momento. ¿Qué hemos obtenido como resultado? Vemos que hemos roto una barrera comunicacional que fomenta un poco la confianza entre el estudiante y el docente, generando una cercanía sin perder la formalidad. Otro de los temas que surgen de estas encuestas que les comenté, que les hacemos todos los años a nuestros estudiantes y que más o menos se repiten los resultados año a año, es que nuestros estudiantes, por lo general, se enteran de las novedades de la cátedra a través de una historia de Instagram. Más allá de que sí usamos el campus virtual para novedades y los docentes sí las comunican en clase. Nuestros estudiantes manifiestan que usan más la red social. Aquí hay 2 ejemplos de algunas comunicaciones de distintos momentos como para que puedan ver. Vemos que aquí en esta diapositiva aparece un canal de difusión de WhatsApp, porque en los últimos 2 años hemos agregado a esta cuenta de Instagram 3 herramientas más. El canal de difusión de WhatsApp, un chatbot en WhatsApp para respuestas automáticas y nuestra última incorporación es un podcast en la plataforma Spotify. Este podcast lo hemos implementado en las últimas 5 semanas del cursado pasado. hemos hecho un episodio semanal y hemos medido las mediciones de las escuchas para ver el promedio de retención de los estudiantes. Y podemos ver que estos primeros resultados, si bien son preliminares porque tienen poco tiempo de uso todavía, nos da nota de un engagement cognitivo asincrónico, que podría fomentar que nuestros estudiantes aprovechen ese tiempo de traslado desde y hacia la facultad para poder tener esto. En lo que son las encuestas, les hacemos muchas preguntas a nuestros estudiantes, pero les traigo dos resultados importantes que me aparecían de la encuesta del último curso. Y es que el 90% de nuestros estudiantes, o sea, 234 sobre 261 personas que respondieron a la encuesta, afirman que las redes sociales motivan una mayor participación académica para ellos. Y más del 60% dice que participar de cuestionarios y adivinanzas les genera conexión con el tema matemático que se le está enseñando en ese momento. Nosotros usamos también el canal de difusión de WhatsApp para cuestionarios y para adivinanzas para complementar con el uso de la red social Instagram. En el final de la encuesta hay un espacio siempre abierto para que nuestros estudiantes puedan escribir lo que ellos quieran. Les traigo dos comentarios que me parece que resumen un poco toda la exposición que voy haciendo. Una persona puso, me hace sentir que los tengo cerca y me da más confianza. O sea, siente que el docente está más cerca. Y otra persona puso que es mucho más cómodo entrar a la consulta a través de una red social tan conocida como Instagram. Habla de la accesibilidad al docente y al conocimiento y a la consulta. Vemos que hemos roto una barrera de esa formalidad paralizante, porque algo que no dije al inicio es que la materia que yo enseño es del primer año de la universidad. Nuestros estudiantes no llevan un año de egresados del secundario. Lo que quiere decir es que no son tan distintos de los estudiantes del secundario. Por lo tanto, es importante esto que hemos logrado. Las próximas 3 diapositivas se las voy a dejar nada más porque es un marco del rol docente en el que nos movemos, cómo hemos hecho este esquema de movernos desde el pizarrón hacia las redes sociales y qué es lo que denota la arquitectura de engagement estudiantil que hemos logrado con todo esto que venimos charlando, más allá de que conocemos que el impacto académico directo se tiene que medir un poco más preciso, pero vemos que sí tenemos resultados, dado que en muchas otras materias el índice de aprobados va bajando, mientras que nosotros los vamos manteniendo. Retomando un poco entonces esto que les había dicho al inicio, ¿por qué le he llamado aula expandida a la exposición? Porque hemos salido del aula física, hemos avanzado sobre el campus virtual que ya veníamos trabajando y nos hemos expandido al lugar en donde habitan nuestros estudiantes sin perder todo el formalismo anterior que ya teníamos. Aquí les dejo los dos perfiles del Instagram oficial de la cátedra y del podcast que les mencioné, por si tienen curiosidad de ver más ejemplos de los que pude traerles en 15 minutos. Y con esto ya doy por finalizado para no pasarme del tiempo. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much, Elisa. That was wonderful. You're getting lots of love with the emojis. Before we turn it over to Sean, I want to remind you that you have the question document. If anything sparked your ideas, feel free to add them to the document, and then we will turn it over to Sean.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Let me bring up my slideshow. Can you all see my screen, the presentation?
Not yet, Sean.
Okay, I think it might be because I'm trying to be fancy and do this on 2 screens.
Well, while you're being fancy, I'll say Raluca wins the award for being the first person to fill something out on our question document. So, Raluca, I'm sending you pretend 1 million US dollars, which is valued at much higher than 1 million Argentinian pesos. Sean, how is the presentation coming? There we go. Now we can see it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, again, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Gruber. Hopefully the translations have been working for you. I'm going to do my part in English. So me and Elisa are tag teaming, going back and forth. It's good to see everybody. So I am a lecturer in the math department at the University of Maryland. And today I want to share some things that I've learned just as a practicing teacher, and I'll give some background in terms of sort of how I ended up at Maryland. And also just kind of wanted to spend some time giving some insights that have come from some research that I've been a part of, but to make this presentation sort of digestible in the time that we have, I thought I'd kind of try to make this more personal in the sense of hopefully you can walk away with some things that are stand out or helpful to you. And I just want to say up front, there may be things here that are not surprising to you, but I think it's worthwhile to bring up just to spark conversation for when we get into our breakout rooms. So I sort of joke that, but not really joke, I've spent about a third of my life at Maryland. So I was an undergraduate student in the math department in the College of Education at Maryland. As a student, there were a lot of times, especially when you get into the math major, sort of smaller sections of classes, there were a lot of moments or times where I kind of felt a little bit distant, especially in a college setting where it's a little bit harder to connect with people, maybe in comparison to, for instance, high school. And so I felt like I was kind of alone in figuring out some ideas for learning how to become a learner of mathematics, which I kind of see as a different sort of route of learning from just learning the mathematics itself. So what does it actually mean to be a student of mathematics? And I kind of felt like I was a little bit on my own in trying to figure out what that space was. And so that kind of led me to wanting to think about, what are some ways that instruction in an undergraduate setting can be improved. And this is just I'll drop in some fun pictures throughout too. This is a picture of my wife and I. We met at Maryland. She was a music teacher, so we both connected on the education space, and it was a fun time. We both sort of went back to school, and she's now a music therapist. So this is a more recent picture of us. And then I went all the way back in my albums, and I found a really old picture of myself. I think I was a sophomore maybe in this picture. So I've always had a deep connection with Maryland. So fast forward to finishing my bachelor's degree, and I stayed to get my master's in teaching. I became a high school teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools here in Maryland. And I taught high school for 3 years. And you can see the couple of courses that I taught there. Before I really sort of felt a calling to, again, I sort of was always interested in how do you engage students in a university setting? So taking what I had learned, in my short time as a high school teacher and how that fits in, or if it fits into a university setting. And so I went back and got my PhD in math education, and I spent a year at Johns Hopkins in their math department as a visiting physician, and really started to sort of dive deep into how university undergraduate math courses could be sort of redesigned. And I'll highlight pre-calculus in particular, because that's been a big focus for us at Maryland, to really create what I'm framing as sort of a respite for students. And so When I think of respite, I think of sort of usually that term's used as sort of like getting relief from something. And so for a lot of students, I think we'll probably agree that there's a lot of students that really struggle with some of those same struggles that I put up on the screen earlier. And those carry over into college. And so what does that look like in the college setting? So this is something that I actually put in my syllabus every semester because I really kind of wanted to share with students and have found that being upfront with them about why a course is designed the way it is, not just saying, here's the course, hopefully you adapt to it, but giving them more of like, what's the motivation behind it can be incredibly powerful in helping them stay sort of alert to seeing how different moves that you make in the classroom and over the course of the semester can help them engage with something that usually is very stressful or even triggering for students, like it was for myself when I was at the university. So I really try to frame mathematics as, again, this is not something necessarily new, but it's a place, a subject of exploration where you can ask questions, and it's okay to not understand something the first time. You know, especially in a university setting, it can be sort of intentionally or unintentionally communicated that this is something you should understand after the first time I present it in class, right? And getting into more of a normative structure where it's okay to struggle with something, I found to be super helpful in sort of making that a norm of the classroom. So students go into the semester knowing, hey, it's okay if I struggle with something a bit more and it takes me a bit of time. That's part of the process. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of context as to what Maryland looks like so that you can kind of frame some of the takeaways I've gathered from research in my own teaching practices in context. And I was very happy to find these nice pictures of, maybe you all know Kermit the Frog from the Muppets. So just a claim to fame for Maryland is Jim Henson, who created the Muppets, went to Maryland. And that bottom picture, I don't know how they're ever going to top it, but they had Kermit the Frog speak as the graduation speaker last year, which was an absolute blast. And then this is a statue of Jim Henson and Kermit on campus. So just a couple fun things about Maryland, but just to kind of give you some context about Maryland, it's a public university with about 31,000 undergraduates, and then there's about 10K graduate students. And so you can see there's a lot of people that enroll. And I want to point out that one of the percentages I've listed is that 71% of the students are commuters. So we do have dormitories on campus. And I actually lived on campus as an undergraduate myself. But a large percentage of the student population are commuters. And so they're coming to classes and they're usually spending the day on campus to make the most of the travel. And then, you know, depending on their schedule, usually they're not on campus unless they have to be there for class. And of course that can vary by student, but and then a little bit more specific about the math department itself, we have a math placement exam that students take to give them some direction as to what class they should start out in. And then there are, depending on the level of the course, the more, I'll say, introductory or 100, 200 level courses are your large lecture courses. And I'll show you a picture of this space so you can kind of see what that looks like. And then they break off into discussions throughout the week with teaching assistants that are usually graduate students from the department. And so one of the places that we've been really trying to focus on is our pre-calculus course, which has been a course that's near and dear to my heart. It was the focus of my dissertation. It was the very first class I took at Maryland. So it was a very full circle moment for me, 10 plus years later, and thinking about how these large lecture courses, even in those, we can implement active learning and try to help students experience a bit of a respite from the typical, maybe stressful experience they've had with mathematics. A little bit more about our instruction breakdown in terms of faculty. We this is just roughly speaking, we're broken into sort of two roles, if you will, with certainly some nuances, but typically we have our lecturers, which is the group that I fall in. And then we have our research faculty. And so those are sort of the two main groups that make up the department. So the lecturers, our primary role is teaching. And so anything related to research or other projects, we have to kind of squeeze in extra time to fit in. So lots of good projects going on amongst the lecturers as well. So now that you've seen some context, this is a bit of a breakdown of this pre-calculus class, and I'm going to use this as a lead-in to kind of just describe some takeaways of how, whether it be a smaller class or a larger class, and you can see the large lecture hall here. I picked one of the nicer rooms to put on display. The math department is a little bit outdated, but this is a really fantastic space. I don't know if you can see it, but there's on the walls here, there's actually whiteboards, and that's actually on the other side as well. And these chairs kind of swivel. So it's designed for even in a large lecture space to promote active learning and having students turn and talk and be able to engage with each other, even in a large lecture space. But you can see this is quite a big class, and obviously the enrollments differ, depending on the semester you're in. I will say this class is typically bigger in the fall. But you can see there's several discussion sections and there's a large lecture. Some of the discussion sections meet a little bit longer, twice a week, and some for shorter, 3 times a week. And then there's also, I thought I'd throw this in, there's a unique program called Freshman Connection that I've taught that is an afternoon version of the course, and that's sort of its own setup. And so this course is really important because it's sort of the branch to 3 different, I'll say, variations or flavors, if you will, of calculus. One being the traditional sort of STEM, engineering, mathematics version of calculus. One being more of a business calculus, and then a third that's more along the biological route for calculus. So it's a really fascinating course because folks take this and they sort of branch off in all sorts of different directions. So thinking about a respite or creating a respite for students, there's a couple of things that I again, maybe not too much new here, but I thought would be useful to reference for us to spark discussion. This may not surprise you. High school seniors and college freshmen are actually pretty similar still. And so I found that in these pre-calculus classes and these introductory math courses in this first year, a couple of teaching moves or practices I've put in place to really help students acclimate to the college environment is, of course, when appropriate, but thinking about leniency of due dates, right? So having like grace periods for assignments, that was a really big takeaway for myself, I'll say, during COVID. And I kind of got the sense that students really appreciated that. And of course, there's the unique cases where you have to be careful that students aren't abusing those grace periods, but making it more of sort of bringing the human component into the math space. In addition to that, this idea of just-in-time instruction. So especially in a course like pre-calculus, there's some topics that need to be revisited so that students feel confident in the next topic that's a bit more new to them. But not necessarily making that a whole lesson, but having things like warm-ups at the beginning of class, or an extra problem on a homework assignment that's a factoring question that's not necessarily related to the new content you're discussing, but using these sort of just-in-time moments to help them review content. I'm a really big fan and have been using for several semester mixtures of group and individual assignments, particularly group quizzes, where there's an individual component and a group component. So that really helps create a space where, again, normalizing the fact that sort of when people out in public, if you were to ask them what doing math looks like, from experience, I would say usually someone would picture someone is sitting at a desk and they're just writing on a piece of paper by themselves. And I always encourage my students, if you ever have a moment, walk through the math department and you'll see that's not quite what's happening. You'll see professors in each other's offices and writing on each other's blackboards or having conversations over a cup of coffee. So really creating a space where collaboration is really at the center of the teaching that's going on. I really love all of the components that Elisa was talking about and her research related to the use of technology, and sort of a takeaway question, because I know resources are always a big question of, what can I do? I really try to think about like what is manageable for myself and my time. So it doesn't have to be I do exactly what another instructor does in terms of technology, but what's doable for yourself. Even the smallest thing can often be very helpful. For instance, recording lectures has been a huge help for students as they go through these courses. In terms of like in the moment instruction, not being afraid to validate students' questions, even when they're not fully formed thoughts or there's misconceptions in them, can be incredibly powerful. Especially in a big class like this large lecture, there's always a handful of students that are willing to share, but usually once you sort of show that you're willing to accept answers that may or may not be correct or may have some truth to them or some issues that need to be addressed, making that a normative part of the classroom can really help students stay engaged. And then I tried to express this one through this presentation with some of my pictures, but really showing your experience too as a student. Sharing, I remember when I took this class, right, which I can very easily do because I literally did take these classes, the ones that I'm teaching now, and saying, I remember this was a super difficult topic for me, and this is how I went through and made sense of it, or how much time it took me to reflect on it. So those types of things can be incredibly powerful. So again, not necessarily anything new for you, but maybe just some things to circle back to or things that you've been considering that might be helpful. And I just wanted to put in, this is one of my favorite pictures of a smaller class that I taught related to introduction to proofs. And I just really love this picture because it kind of was a great moment for me to sort of see these things in action. So, and then I had to include obviously my picture with Testudo, our mascot, in the top left at my graduation. But if you're interested, there's a link in a QR code that gets into more of the nitty gritty of the research, especially around this pre-calculus course that we've sort of redesigned over the last several years. But hopefully you took something away as just food for thought, and I appreciate you guys' attention. Thank you.
Sean, excellent. You're getting a lot of love with the emojis. Really thank you to both Elisa and Sean. I see a couple of questions already popping up on our chat document. In a moment, I am going to open up the breakout rooms. So you will be paired. There are groups of 3 to 4 people. We tried to partner you based on your language preferences, but also to mix you up because Sean and Elisa teach at the university setting. I do teach part-time at the university setting, but I teach math. Pre-K through 12th grade. I support those students. I know some of my colleagues are here who also, both in Argentina and in the United States, support secondary school. And I'm even thinking about how this can apply to elementary school. So as you speak with your group, we hope you have a nice discussion. I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. You can also think about some questions for maybe just in general, anyone in this call. Hey, has anyone ever heard of this? Or I teach this group of students. Do you have ideas? You know, that can be a place where you can be asking each other. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms, and I'm going to remind you of those reflection questions. They're on slide 5 if you have your slides open, and hopefully this works. So now you should have gotten an invite to join the breakout room. You can go ahead and click join. Welcome back, everyone. I know my group got kicked out right in the middle of Raluca giving a good example of what she does. Hopefully, I'm sure it happened in the other rooms too.
Yes, Javier was cut off.
I always cut off Javier. It's okay. It was so interesting in our room to be able to talk from different perspectives, like geographically, the students we encounter, but there were so many similarities, and I'm hoping you found some of those as well. I'm going to take just a few of the questions or comments off of the doc and pose them to the group. If you have other things that you'd like to share, we might take one or two of those as well. So there were some questions, Elisa, about your technology. Was the WhatsApp chat box and the meme production your own creation, or was there some support from your IT technology department or somewhere else?
Most of it was homemade. I mean, we have an IT department at the university, but we didn't get that much help as we thought we would have. So we have to make our own research. And some important thing is that we need free stuff because we don't have any money. So we need to find free resources to do that. So it's kind of a limited chatbot because we wanted to set it in WhatsApp, not out of it. But it worked well. And I think it was like a good tool for our students.
Thank you, Elisa. Okay, Sean, I'm going to punt you an easy one here. There was a question about the placement exam. So depending on how a student does, can a student begin at a more advanced mathematics course as soon as they enter the university?
Yeah, that's a great question. I also wanted to give a shout out to Raluca. I'm sure you learned this in our group, but she has also been intimately a part of this redesign of pre-calculus over the past several years. Yeah, the placement exam is interesting. The short of it is there are some unique circumstances where if you get placed at a certain level, you could still take a higher class. I think that you'd have to get permission to do that. But I think that we're actually going through a rewrite of the placement exam right now. And I think the goal is to more so frame it as a strong guidance to students as opposed to this is where you got placed, so you need to take this class. So we'll see where that goes.
And just to clarify, not everyone who comes to Maryland starts in pre-calculus.
Yeah.
Could start in calculus 3, depending, or even in college algebra, or even less, depending on how they come from high school.
Yeah, so that's a very stark difference from Argentina and the United States on, what they have come with and where everyone starts, and it definitely changes how you approach teaching. So thank you for bringing that up, Aida. Okay, so here is a deeper question. Thank you, Rodney. I'm so glad you asked this. I'm going to pose it to Sean and Elisa, but anyone really can answer this, I think, Rodney, unless you had a very specific person in mind. But Rodney asks, how is equity framed in these cases, and what approaches do researchers operationalize to attend to such frames? Rodney, before we answer, was there any clarification you wanted to give, or keeping it broad?
Yeah, just curious how you're thinking about equity in these cases.
So before I toss it off, I'm gonna answer one thing that Montgomery County Public Schools did where I'm working is all of our math educators, our coaches used a book, Choosing to See, a framework for equity in the mathematics classroom. And I've read it and reread it multiple times. Lou's giving hearts to that one. And yeah, there it is, Rodney. Such a good one.
This is the one that you gave me.
Yeah. But I'm telling for everyone else. So I actually got to do an international book study with that book with Elisa and Raquel, and that is what we presented on in Japan, on what we learned from that book and how we applied it to our context. Elisa as a teacher of students, me as a coach of teachers of math students. So that book is a really great place to start, where we talked a lot about math identity, which also came up in my small group room. But Elisa and Sean, feel free to add on. How does equity come up in your research and your work?
So my this was the part I didn't get too much into detail with, but my research is centered around how these ideas of active learning that I was trying to incorporate in the presentation, how those relate, if at all, to STEM intentions and achievement, but also student self-efficacy, specifically within these, like a pre-calculus class or a calculus class or a college algebra class. So a lot of the changes that we've been doing, for instance, in pre-calculus, have been focused on increasing or helping support students' self-efficacy so that they feel not just confident in like their understanding of the content, but like I was saying in the presentation, like in their feeling confident in how to study for a math course, which is like a whole set of strategies that some students come to college not knowing or not having a lot of experience with or structure around. And so I think that relates a lot to, we found in this pre-calculus class that if you engage students in these, various strategies where they're, you're having them drive the discussion, you're using what they say to kind of circle through the different topics and circle back to things. Even those like small teaching moments we found can really be beneficial in helping students feel having more self-efficacy and feeling like they're a part of the classroom. And I'll put a link here too. So there's some practical like workshops that our university offers that touches on things like, accessibility and, designing a course to be student-centered and things like that. So.
I want to add something, but I'm going to say it in Spanish. Hope everybody has their captions on. En nuestro caso, dada la cantidad de estudiantes que tenemos, si bien hemos tenido una experiencia basada en el libro que mencionó Rachel el año pasado, pero implementada en un grupo chico de estudiantes de 20 alumnos y tuvimos excelentes resultados realmente, nuestros estudiantes vienen con muchas diferencias. Entonces, realmente poder trabajar sobre la equidad y sobre el garantizar este mismo acceso a la educación para todos, cuando tenemos los 800 o 900 alumnos es un poco más complicado, pero un poco de lo que intentamos hacer también a través de las redes sociales es fomentar la confianza para que esos estudiantes se acerquen a la cátedra, porque muchas veces los que más necesitan el apoyo docente no se animan por todo lo que tienen su historia y con toda la vivencia que han traído de las etapas previas o vivencias con otros docentes, incluso en la misma facultad. Entonces, para poder encontrar a esos estudiantes, es que utilizamos las redes sociales, el humor, el acceso a la confianza para que puedan ellos acercarse, dado que teniendo 800, 900 es más difícil, siendo 8 profesores, encontrarlos. Entonces tratamos de que ellos se acerquen para poder darles el acompañamiento que necesitan y tal vez garantizar un poco más la equidad en el acceso a la educación.
Gracias, Elisa. Javier.
Ok, gracias, Rachel. Voy a hablar en español también, porque siempre hablo en inglés, entonces para una vez que puedo hablar en español de estos temas, la voy a aprovechar. Me parecía, eso es lo que iba a decir en mi grupo, y me parece increíble que los mismos principios pedagógicos que son fundamentales en pre-kinder con niños de 4 años se mantienen hasta la universidad, ¿no? O sea, el crear esas relaciones personales con tus estudiantes es fundamental y lo que he aprendido hoy es que es fundamental en todas las edades. Y por el trabajo que estáis diciendo de equidad, como para, ¿no?, conseguir que los chavales de todas las edades lo hagan bien en los exámenes. O sea, se necesita esa conexión y esas relaciones humanas. Eso estábamos diciendo en nuestro grupo. Eso, y la otra cosa que había apuntado era el explicar el por qué. El por qué el contenido que estamos enseñando es importante, el por qué merece la pena el esfuerzo. Igual, creo que es uno de los pilares pedagógicos que trascienden todos los niveles.
Gracias, Javier. See, that's why we love to have him close by. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I think that we could, as lovers of math and teaching, we could probably talk forever. But I know for the Americans, it's going to get close to dinner time. The Argentinians, you have about 10 hours until it's dinner time, because that's how they roll in Argentina. I've been there.
Merienda.
Oh, but first, yes, primero merienda. Please have some dulce de leche for me. Before you go, we have one more bit for you. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. So we really value your feedback. You have the slides, so you can just click on the link there, but also we have the bit.ly, or you can scan the QR code. We have a few short questions that we would love for you to answer. And after all of this, we will send you all the recording, any of the links and the resources that were shared. We'll also share, everyone's email is on here. So if you want to connect with each other, we highly encourage that. You see what happened when the US sent me to Argentina, and we all ended up here. So thank you. Another big thank you again to UNT, the Universidad Nacional de Tucumán, and especially the economics faculty for hosting this. And we'll hang out and stay, but we did want to give you that permission to sign off and have a good night. Thank you.
Gracias por sumarse.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, muchas gracias. Muy enriquecedora la charla. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a todos.
por
Buenas
participar.
tardes. Y yo.
Chao, Lu, gracias por venir.
Chao, Lisa.
Bye,
Chao,
bye.
Rachel.
Ciao, Lu. So good to
Ciao.
see you. Hopefully I see you in Hawaii.